My Sunshine by Rob Smit. February 5, 2035. There's not enough hours in a day, thought the impatient trillionaire president of the free world, as the sun slowly traced a golden arc on the horizon, throwing long shadows across his property. His collection of cars, the jewel-encrusted statuettes, the peacocks with platinum collars strutting in the garden. All this wealth, and still the sun faded, slowly casting his million-dollar golf trophies into shadow. Of course there should be more daytime in the day, because sleep is for losers. But what really left the trillionaire president stewing, his eyes narrowing to triangles in the dusk, was this simple fact. The sun is leaving me, and all my coolness, my palace, my sports cars, and Playboy bunnies, just to go over to the other side of the world, their side, the commie side, the yellow side. The sun goes over there to hang out with those losers. He fumed and sipped vintage Diet Pepsi from a 7-Eleven big gulp cup. What the hell is there to shine on over there? Shitty cities, boring shrines, garbage floating in dirty rivers? Rice? His hand trembled once, twice. He couldn't hold it in. He dashed the cup to the ground and glared at the traitorous ball of fire in the sky, his muscles throbbing with anger, his mood equally incandescent. "Can you believe that?" he shouted to no one in particular. "Those yellow commie sons of bitches are enjoying my sun." The impatient trillionaire president of the free world fumed and thought some more, until things were aching up there. He snatched out his diamond-encrusted Scrooge McDuck flip phone and speed-dialed people who knew how to do things. Never mind, it'd soon be dark. They'll bend a knee before him no matter what time it was. Soon, several helicopters had landed on the helipads behind the White House, and a team of national security goons and a handful of nervous-looking men following in tow hustled into the war room, a presidential suite redone with esteemed military iconography, namely plaster busts of himself and Kid Rock in full military kit holding bazookas. As the impatient trillionaire president of the free world sipped Tahiti treat from a 7-Eleven big gulp cup, a different one, and endured their gawky presence, the group of men, who were in fact his presidential team of civil engineers, conferred amongst themselves in hushed whispers. They were huddled around a paper napkin that the impatient trillionaire president of the free world had sketched designs upon, their calculators clicking, math tools making numbers. As one, they all looked up from the napkin with grim faces, carrying the same look you would have when you see rain clouds at your child's ball game. The impatient trillionaire president of the free world did not like seeing faces that looked like that. The group's main nerd, John Richardson, a longtime science consultant to previous White House administrations, cleared his throat and stepped forwards. "Sir?"
"Your Excellency,"
Lex, the main security goon, barked. Your Excellency," Richardson continued, chastened. "If we were to enact your scheme here, we believe it would kill all life on Earth." "Hogwash," the impatient trillionaire president of the free world thundered, and the scientists were promptly choked from behind with piano wire garrots, dead to a man. Their corpses were dragged away to the crocodile room. The impatient trillionaire president of the free world pulled out his flip phone again. Within a half hour, choppers again buzzed outside the presidential walls, and another group of engineers and scientists were ushered in. And then a half hour later, they were all choked to death when they too refused to have a hand in the napkin plan. One particularly uppity science nerd spat like a cornered cat as the piano wires bit deep into his Adam's apple. "You're psycho! You're homicidal!" Choke. That last comment confused the trillionaire president. These guys weren't smart after all, he reflected. Any woman he'd ever been to bed with could tell you that the trillionaire president was no homicide doll, whatever that was. For this slight, he would have that guy fed twice to the crocodiles. Once everyone cleared out of the war room, he silently regarded Kid Rock's profile as he pondered his situation. "One day, the sun will never set on you, my friends," he promised to the rows upon rows of golf trophies, the priceless and gaudy sculptures of noble champions of the game, of Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and a whitened MAGA-correct version of Tiger Woods. He realized he would have to bring in bigger guns. The president moved to action. Diamonds on his phone reflected ambient light and sent sparkles dancing all across the room like a mini disco as the president called in the big guns. Within an hour, a SpaceX rocket ship power thrusted backwards out of the starry, sunless sky and burned a 20-foot crater across the White House lawn. Landing gear descended, crushing several garden maintenance personnel who were scurrying about, wailing with despair over sizzled begonias. Pressure-bolted landing hatches exploded out with a great force of rushing air, and a steel ramp smoothly extended to the grass. From within the depths of the hissing ship, insane tittering could be heard. A platoon of android soldiers marched down the ramp, escorting a line of leg-ironed, straight-jacketed lunatics. The group of ragged figures would be recognizable to anyone who paid attention to the late United States space program. Before their careers were terminated for political reasons, each man belonged to a cadre of NASA's finest ship designers and aerospace engineers and technicians. There was in their ranks even one former astronaut, now as far from the stars as a fallen angel could be. Collectively, they were called the Lost Bunch. Having lost all respect for the current political regime in particular and humanity in general, the ragtag group of NASA expats stole a decommissioned shuttlecraft and blasted themselves away from Earth, looking for a nicer place. However, the trillionaire had the Lost Bunch captured soon after takeoff. The reclaimed shuttle was converted into the U.S. government's very first orbital Black Ops prison, where the renegade engineers were tortured, psychologically and mentally broken, and then horrifyingly rebuilt to suit his needs. Because, with uncommon acumen, the trillionaire president knew that a moment like this would come sooner or later.
Have a look, fellas.
He offered the drooling freaks a glimpse of the napkin plan. Inspiration spread like wildfire licking across a dry prairie, the burning fires of purpose kindling each of their withered hearts. They jabbered excitedly in a language they had created during their interstellar incarceration. Again, calculators and obscure math tools were produced, and arcane physics formulae were scrawled in bodily fluids across the nearest surface, the wall. As one, the mutilated, mutated, and now motivated Mensa members stepped back from their calculations and bowed before the plan.
It's genius, Your Excellency,
one slurred. We only wish it had been done sooner. Yeah, we can do this, another said as he chewed off his own fingers.
The day of the forever sun comes! The day of the forever sun comes!
Cackled the former astronaut, wild-eyed. The chant was taken up, and it became a fervent prayer amongst everyone present in the room. Everyone except the impatient trillionaire president of the free world, who had long ago grown bored with the discussions and was profoundly asleep in his throne, snoring. February 12, 2035. Motion began on the forever sun. The napkin plan didn't quite have the oomph required for a working title. One of the engineers, a modern English fan, suggested I'll stop the world and melt with you, but there were concerns about copyright. Oil drilling companies were brought in for the consulting stage, including the Russian engineers who managed to drill the Kola super deep borehole SG-3, the deepest oil sinkhole on Earth. What you will need, comrade, in order to obtain your goal An old Russian named Kolosky Mikolosky intoned before an assembled body of astroscientists, technical experts, and of course politicians, is to stop the Earth's rotation. The old man produced a sheet of paper, a rudimentary blueprint, to explain to the trillionaire president the steps going forwards. The effort of hefting the paper was too much for the old Cossack, and he tottered for a moment, dizzy. Mikolosky steadied himself, puffing. His younger counterpart took over, a nihilistic Russian space engineer named Viktor von Vladimir, who continued to explain the plan, which would undoubtedly destroy the Earth, with as much concern in his voice as one would have reading a listing in a telephone book. The trillionaire president studied the blueprint. It resembled a picture of an orange being pierced by a needle. It was, in fact, that.
This orange, the Earth. This needle, a needle. Well, needle doesn't quite get the meaning across. Take a common sewing needle and magically expand its measurements by 50 zeros. Try to imagine a vast steel length with a height exceeding the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, stacked on top of all the other towers from all over the world. That's what we will call the needle.
Von Vladimir continued.
This vast steel length will be plunged deep into the rocky bones of the Earth to a depth of several miles, ideally somewhere in the heartland of the United States. Even when fully submerged, the needle will still tower over every man-made structure on Earth, like God's own javelin thrust into the heart of this cesspool we call home.
The Russian stood slightly straighter, and his board facade, harder than Siberian permafrost, cracked a little, to make way for some small pride.
It will be glorious.
Because the trillionaire president had already tuned them out and was daydreaming about golf, they stopped the presentation and just got his senior advisors to sign off on the plan, and subsequently moved straight to implementing step 1, which would require several weeks of pre-drilling and blasting. Just as a tsunami is born in small waves that lead to unforeseen destruction, the Forever Sun plan, formerly the Napkin Plan, had begun.